Hey everyone, we're live, pal. This is episode 100. Andrew Zarian and I here, and we have a special show today, which we'll talk about in a second. But first, Andrew, how's the house? What's going on? You haven't given me a
Well,
house update.
the guys are working still. They're gutting everything, and it just so turns out that this will be the last show that I do in this current studio for I guess the next couple of weeks because I'm redoing this whole thing. So that's the next big project. So this is the last one. 12 years we got out of this studio, and this is the last show that I'm doing in this setup.
So the next show that we do, are you telling me there's going to be like a Zoom setup with kids running around in the background and like a green screen of like a beach? Like what's the next setup going to be like?
No, well, next week I'm in LA. So if everything goes well on when I'm there, I'll probably be doing the show from the Ball Truth Studios in
Oh,
Beverly
wow.
Hills.
That's
So I'll be
fancy.
there. Yeah, it is a fancy. It's a very fancy studio. I'll be there, and then when we come back, it'll be a brand new studio. So the following,
There
so
you
in
go.
2 weeks.
All right. So crossing our fingers that everything goes well with that. Well, so episode 100, what do you think about like when we set out to do this? I don't know if I thought, what 100 episodes of doing this show would mean other than that, I pretty much knew we were going to enjoy it. And also, we were doing it with Denise in the first many episodes. So it's a little bit of a different show, but since, it's been mostly you and I, what do you like? Did you have any thoughts on what 100 episodes means? Because you've been doing your show with Rich forever, so this is like just a little token. But
Uh,
100 episodes is a
yeah,
pretty big deal in podcasting
it
world,
is
I
a big
think.
deal. Of course, it's 2 years consistently. As I sneeze as I'm going into that. I think it's amazing. I think the fact that we've done this for 100 episodes is great. I have a great time doing this. It's informative. People enjoy it. I get a lot of feedback about this show. This is one of my favorite shows that I do. I do 3 shows and they're my favorites. Between Matt Mendes and Observer. I think it's been a blast. I have a great time doing this. I think our approach has always been we were in Vegas and we were having a drink at the bar there. And we're like, yeah, this is exactly the show. It's just 2 people at the bar having a conversation and making a couple jokes and talking about something that they're very interested in. I think it's been a really fun. This whole wrestling thing for me has been bonkers.
Yeah,
It's been a lot
yeah.
of fun. But this is a highlight to my week to do this with you and talk to everybody and have the chat asking questions and everything else. I think it's tremendous.
So I buried the lead a little bit on what this show is about. Because it is our 100th episode, we are introducing a feature for this show that we hope to do around once a month. And this is kind of the guinea pig here, which is we're going to do a Q&A on the second half of this show around 1:30ish. Bryan Alvarez is going to join us. And it's going to be, Andrew and I just talking to Bryan about whatever, but also for people who are watching, if you want to ask Bryan or if you want to ask the 3 of us, or if you don't even want me to talk and you just want Andrew and Bryan to discuss something, if you send in a super chat, we will push that question through and you can do a little bit of a Q&A with our special guest. Now, this is the first time we're doing this. Hopefully in the future, maybe we get Big Dave Meltzer, maybe we get Filthy Tom, Lance Storm, Vinny V, all of the folks that you see and hear on other shows. But this is going to be the first one. So around 1:30, we expect Bryan to join us. So in 25 minutes or so. And then we'll figure it out. We're kind of running without a script, but I think it'll be fun. So anytime we get a
Yeah,
chance to talk to Bryan, it's always a blast. So
it is.
first off, before we have some stuff to talk about before Bryan gets in. What have you heard about the Seth injury? I was watching Raw and I saw where he hurt himself and he finished that match. It did not look like he was having a great time doing it. Have we heard anything about the severity of this injury?
Yeah, I think we're waiting. They said they'll have more information on Wednesday. Um, I don't know. I hope it's not serious. And what a terrible time. I mean, listen, all injuries are terrible, but what a terrible time this would be if it is something serious. Because if he tore something, the odds are he's probably going to be out of WrestleMania if it's serious enough. So I'm hoping it's not. You could see where they were headed with Seth and what they were doing between Punk and everything else that's going on. And to be honest, Raw's been on a very positive incline with their creative. I've been enjoying it. I haven't watched Raw in God. I mean, we talk about this all the time. I don't watch it live anymore because it's not must see TV, and I watch it because we cover the show.
Yeah.
And it's been much better. I'm not gonna say it's really good, but I'm gonna say it's much better with certain people that they're positioning in certain places between Seth, Drew, Punk, and Cody. You have something really interesting there.
Drew is like the best promo going right now. What a
Dude, he's been great.
fantastic version of this character he's doing. And I think people have mentioned it. It reminds me a little bit of Bret Hart 1997, where he's kind
Not
of
giving a crap.
yeah, he's just kind of he's kind of a baby face to the people who love him, but he's grumpy and he's grouchy and he kind of comes off as a heel, but you sort of understand his motivations as a heel.
Yeah.
But I thought the stuff with Cody was awesome. And like, Cody does a specific babyface promo that originally when he started doing it, I thought it was going to be turned on by the fans, but he's been able to keep the fans fired up for him as a babyface. But when you do see the heel promo or whatever it is, the gray where Drew lives right now, I think Drew just was an amazing promo last night. I was like, man, I just want to see Drew do
Yeah.
something. So whatever is in the mix for Drew, I hope it's pretty big. But what happens when you're not changing the titles all that frequently is you have Roman and Seth with the two top men's titles. And then you have all of these viable contenders. Like Drew McIntyre is on, one of his better runs ever right now. You have Cody, obviously. We're trying to see if he's going to finish that story. We'll see what happens with The Rock as far as him coming back and doing a match at WrestleMania. But my sort of dark horse favorite in this whole thing is Damian Priest. Like, he's got the briefcase. Every time he shows up with this briefcase,
Yeah.
you have people on the internet going like, oh, I knew it. I knew he was going to cash. And then he doesn't cash. But the fact that people are kind of hook, line, and sinker for that thing, the top of the card on the men's side is very hot right now. And it kind of makes me wonder, because Rock throws a little bit of a wrench into this situation, but at the same time, he's going to bring so many eyeballs and he's going to bring so much more money that it's worth the risk of the monkey wrench into the stories. But man, the top of the card right now is pretty hot for WWE.
Oh, tremendous. It's tremendous on the top of the card. And you kind of look at it, and it's interesting, right? Because would you say that Raw is more top heavy now than SmackDown is? Or do you think it's an equal split?
I think the characters on Raw I like better outside of Roman. Like Randy's great, LA Knight's great, AJ is solid, but I just enjoy Drew and Cody more than those guys, I think, right now. And Seth is part of that calculus.
Yeah.
And like you said, if he gets hurt, it does change some things. And it's something that I want to ask Bryan about when we do get him on, because I think it seems like the idea is like pairing, like Cody's been doing segments with a lot of different people. He's doing segments with Seth. He's doing segments with Drew. He's doing a segment with Punk next week. So it's almost like they're putting into the heads, like, we don't know exactly what Cody's doing at WrestleMania if he doesn't win the Royal Rumble. Like, there's different things that they can do, and they're kind of putting all of those things into the fans' head during Raw.
And and here's the thing, right? Because WWE is very one track when it comes to feuds, right? They've kind of gone backwards with this, like how it used to be almost in the late '90s during the Attitude Era, where you had Hunter in the mix, you had Foley in the mix, you had Austin, you had Dwayne, Jericho could be injected in there, or whoever else. There were multiple people, Undertaker, Kane, multiple people fighting for that top position, rather than it being, okay, now it's your turn.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like what they're doing with Drew, mixing it up with everybody, that my turn is gone. And I do like how this year's Rumble is kind of being set up for just it could be anybody, right? And it changes the entire structure. If it's Cody, what do? What title does he challenge for? Because there's the Dwayne variable. If it's Punk, what happens then? There's so many different variables. It may not be any of them. Maybe none of them win it. That's
Yeah.
the other thing. Maybe it could be Drew and Seth is the man. There's so many different moving parts here. But the other part is I want to see the interaction in the Rumble, right? I want to see Punk and Cody have interaction. I want to
Hmm.
see what happens. And also Lesnar, right? We also have him.
Brock is coming back. Yeah.
Brock is coming
You know,
back.
you
So
know what's
so many moving parts.
I think what's fun is WrestleMania, the road to WrestleMania should be fairly predictable, right? Like if you're thinking about business, you think about the folks who make the most business sense for those shows. But at the same time, you have such a hardcore dedicated fan base who you want to make sure aren't getting bored with what is going on. Like if we just said today, like let's say today, January 16th, it's going to be Rock and Roman and it's going to be CM Punk and Seth. Those are your two night 1 and night 2 main events at WrestleMania. Great. It sounds like that's where they're trying to go at least, and we'll see what happens with Seth's injury. But you have this, 1 X million number of fans who are watching 2 point whatever on SmackDown, and you want those fans to be entertained with what you're doing. So you kind of throw out these variables just to keep them on their toes, which is, I think, what's happening with the Cody and Drew stuff or with the Punk and Cody stuff. It's like your smart fans who are like,
Yeah,
oh, are they really like it's almost like you're not trying to fool them, but you're just trying to give them more stuff to think about. And I think it works great for us because, we can talk about all of those things on a
sure.
podcast like this where we go, oh, what if it was, let's say it's Roman and Rock? Well, could Cody and Drew have a match at WrestleMania? Would that be awesome? I think it would be amazing, but it may not be where they go. But they want us to kind of think of these things so that you're
Yeah.
just creating more expectation for when all that stuff finally happens.
Yeah, listen, on the AEW side, I really like the fact that everybody's gunning for that world title now, right? And it's almost a similar situation, not exactly, but it's still the same type of thing where it's not one guy. Your problem is everybody. Everybody wants that title. And I
Yes.
think that creates captivating television.
This is a little bit of an aside. Do you see Samoa Joe as a transitional champion in this scenario?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so and by transitional champion, I mean he is champion so that they could put it on the person that they really want it to be on right now. That and
Yeah,
if
and I think
so,
we all know where it's headed, right? Like we could look at the TV and know that Swerve is being built over the last since the summer for that moment. And I would say, obviously maybe not Revolution. I don't know what his match is going to be, but maybe at Double or Nothing, that's the moment that he takes that.
yeah. And look, Samoa Joe is, if he is a transitional champion, he's a fantastic choice to do that because he's going to have believable matches. He's going to carry segments on the mic because he's such a good speaker. But there is something interesting to me where I'm like, huh, what if Joe does hold it through, two different pay-per-views just to kind of surprise the fans? And some of it would be to kind of hold that Swerve moment, to build Swerve up for that moment rather than, some may consider it a little bit of a hot shot. They don't do enough pay-per-views to where I would think it was a hot shot, but there is an argument that if we are
Yeah.
headed to Swerve, right now he's kind of a quasi babyface, quasi heel. He's got this other thing with Hangman Page. You could just continue the ascent and really give it to him when the fans are ready for it. Because obviously, whenever a babyface wins the title, your immediate question should be, okay, what's next? Is that because the journey is kind of what the fans are fired up to watch, and then when he finally gets the title, then you have to have a plan on what to do with it so that he
Yeah.
stays hot, which is
Well,
hard. Like having a
I
babyface
think for
win the title
AEW,
like that's really hard.
I think it's going to be interesting after the second quarter and beyond for AEW, because that's when we go into monthly pay-per-views, right? That's when everything starts heating up. You're going to have Double or
Wait,
Nothing.
is that a scoop, or is that
Well,
just
well,
what the
no,
schedule was last
I'm
year
going
and I didn't
I'm going
notice it?
based on last year's schedule. Last year's
Okay,
schedule, right?
yeah,
It turned into monthly after Double or Nothing. It was,
right.
which I do have a scoop about a pay-per-view that I have to wait on.
Okay, okay.
I have to wait on, but nothing. It's not like not a new pay-per-view or anything like that. But I have something very interesting regarding one of the shows that they're going to put on this year. And I know people hate it when I say that, but I want people to think about what it could be. I
They
think
just
that's
got
the
to
fun
they
part
just
of
got to
this.
tune in every week, man. They don't
Just
know
tune in every
when
week,
you're
because
when
sometimes,
you're
listen,
about to.
I'm not drinking, right? I'm drinking a hop water, which it's a nootropic, so this won't get loose lips will not sink this ship because this is alcohol free. But maybe next week I'll get a
when
little
you're
loose with this
when you're in Beverly Hills, you might be
when I'm in Beverly Hills.
drinking a
Yeah.
little white wine or something.
I'll be at the Peninsula. I'll be hanging out at the bar at the Peninsula. I'll be having my white wine, and then all of a sudden, bam, a text will go out. I think once it starts, because they have a lot of big stuff happening between Double or Nothing, All In, All Out. My favorite one, Forbidden Door. That is my favorite pay-per-view for a number of reasons. And I think this year it'll be even more of a favorite pay-per-view for me for a number of reasons. There's a little hint. I think things will speed up a little bit because there's so many different variables here, because Osprey's now on the way, right? And how does
Yes.
that change the variable for them? And
And
Mercedes is on the way.
I did see Osprey live last weekend, which was awesome.
Hey, can I give a little scoop? I'll do a little
Yeah.
scoop ski.
Yeah,
And
let's
Mercedes
do
is
it.
not on TV this week or next week, okay?
Okay. Okay.
Most likely not the following week either. So
Okay.
I know I've gotten bombarded with this. I don't
You're pushing us
expect
into
her.
February here.
I am pushing you into February. I am. Maybe later too. Maybe a little bit later than that.
You know what that tells me?
What?
Well, I mean, it could be a couple of different things, but one of those things is that you got to create the plan, man. What's the marketing plan?
Oh, they
What's
have
the
it. They have it.
what? Yeah, let's create the environment for when we are ready to debut her, so that we are taking full advantage of that debut.
Yeah, I have no. This is not. Nothing has changed from the information that I've had. Okay, this is not like a new one, but I said I was 90%. People were very focused on two things with the Mercedes stuff. One, why am I getting Trumpish with my hands? Do you see this? What is happening here?
Were you watching the caucuses? What's going on?
No, I want nothing to do with any kind of news anymore. I'm done. I've checked out. I'm up to here in my news. I said, I was 90% confident, or I said I was 98% confident. Listen, if you and I are talking, okay, we're talking, I'm going to tell you I'm 100% confident. All right, I'm pulling the curtain back a little bit, but I'm not going to have that on writing because anything could happen. Listen, someone could decide F this and call it and cancel whatever they had going on. Mercedes is going there. They're building that women's division around her. They want a big name to lead it, and she is a tremendous name for women's wrestling. They're adding all these other pieces, like Deanna's there now, which I think is a great addition to that. Once everybody starts getting healthy and returning, it is going to be a stacked roster for that division. And it's going to be a tremendous asset to them. I don't want to give a date, because I don't have I do and I don't. I don't want to get involved in guesswork here. I'm only laying out the facts. She is going, and we'll find out very soon on the date. Again, soon. What does soon mean? That was it. That was the problem. People thought soon meant tomorrow. If I said, hey, listen, Jimmy's getting married. When is the wedding? In May. Man, that's soon. Carol's getting a divorce. When? Well, the paperwork's in March. Well, that's soon. It's relative. So
Are you
I
saying
can't
she's coming in with a marriage or divorce angle?
a
Is
marriage
that
or
the?
divorce.
I'm just kidding.
Oh
I'm just
God,
kidding.
please no, please.
The
She's
best
gonna ruin a
man,
wedding.
Miro, the best man.
They're gonna, you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna redo that terrible angle with Lana and Rusev during the renewal of their vows or whatever they were doing. Was that a figment of our imagination that they alluded to a lesbian angle for like a week and a half and then took it away?
I don't.
Right, that happened, right?
Yeah, like a lot of that stuff is out of my memory because yeah, that's a
Too much
part of
happened.
WWE I don't want to even bother with.
I know.
Yeah. So okay. So here's a question,
Yeah.
and Mercedes obviously, and I wonder if she's got to be in the Mandalorian movie, right?
Oh, I could find that out easily.
Because I know that that's the next big Star Wars project for the big screen is doing a Mandalorian movie,
Yeah.
and she's been a part of that series in the last 2 seasons. So I think that would be something, and so that yeah, that's very interesting.
There was a lot of speculating as to whether or not I'm full of shit or not about the Mercedes stuff on Twitter, as you saw. And one of them was, well, Zarian must know someone close because he's the one that knew that she was in the Mandalorian. Okay. And that was the story in 2018 or 19 when I said it. And I'm like, no,
Uh-huh.
no, no. That was an angry writer that offloaded a bunch of stuff to me. That's what it was.
Oh wow. Okay, so here's my
Um,
Mercedes. Here's
yeah.
my Mercedes question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The debut of Mercedes has to be big because
It will be big.
you can't that there's not many more of these, and this is the best opportunity to do one of those. Oh, Bryan Danielson is here, or Adam Cole is here, that whole thing that we did a few years ago where all of these debuts seem super important. So I think it's going to be super important, or at least as big as it can get in 2024. But my worry, and this is why I'm okay with them moving this debut out, because I want something tangible for her so that they can take advantage. And this is very unlike the Adam Copeland thing here. Adam Copeland shows up and he's a part of this thing, and then he comes on TV and he's like, "Oh yeah, I just wanted to come back and hang out with my friend Christian. That's why I'm here." No, 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 no. We
Yeah.
need to make this important, right? Like the
Yeah.
Mercedes thing, there needs to be immediately like a big thing. Like she comes out, yay, Mercedes, and now we move to they don't have this opportunity to bring in someone like her often. So let's take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Edge stuff. That was considering how they treated Punk. Um, I think they made a mistake on not having this grand debut and kind of having the vignettes and having the build up and selling it. I think that. And it set the precedence and look at Collision. He didn't really move that number. Not because he's not a star. I think it was more the presentation of how he came in. I would have loved to see him and Christian like embrace for a little bit and maybe do like a false like tag in a match. The first time they've tagged up in X amount of years, and then Christian turns on him. Boom. You just built something.
Yeah. Look, I mean, look, the whole surprise and Tony Khan announcement, like it's been diminishing returns of late, I think. And it's funny because whenever I think of diminishing returns, I think of the first time someone explained what that meant to me, and they're like, they use donuts, and they're like,
Okay.
you have one donut, and it's like the greatest thing in the world. And you have a second donut, and it's not quite as good, but it's still good. And then by the third donut, like you're ready to puke and throw up and hate your life. Like that's how they describe diminishing returns. But that's kind of what it is, right? We have all of these examples from several years ago where every time they did something like this, well, not every time, but a lot of times it was big and the fan base was fired up and reacted, and shows like ours was kudos to AEW for bringing in these guys. And of late, it hasn't been like that. And
Yeah.
so, like, think about you add Edge to this roster, and you've kind of stayed the same, right? Like you would think adding Edge, like, oh, there may be some eyeballs coming over from WWE who really enjoyed him. They've been flat. Maybe he sold a few pay-per-views. It's possible. But for at least for the TV audience, they're kind of flat. So, you would
Yeah.
think that adding somebody will just take you up and to the right, even so slightly, but it hasn't been the case. For whatever reason, the Edge thing didn't work. And I don't think we even thought it was going to work because we were just like, yeah, great. We've seen Edge,
It was
a
bad
lot.
timing too. Like I think a lot of it was just terrible timing. Punk exits, he enters, and you're still dealing with the nonsense around what happened with Punk. Well, we saw some of that also with Jungle Boy, right? We saw his return, but not
the scapegoat,
scapegoat
Jack Perry.
The scapegoat Jack Perry. Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite the surprise because, so from what I understand, he was in a mask, and I don't even think that the people necessarily who were in the back knew what was going on. They just saw this dude in a Bushi mask, and so
the Japanese commentary. Did you watch? You didn't go, right?
No, I was there. I was there live.
Oh, you were there. You know what?
Yeah.
I should have known. I don't know why I thought maybe you skipped this one. In the building, you had no clue, right?
No clue.
Okay.
Just this dude in a mask attacks Shota Umino, and we're like, oh, who is this guy? And even when he pulled off the mask, I was just like, who? Because his beard was disheveled and his hair was disheveled, and then we're like, oh, that's who it is. So it was kind of cool the way that they did it.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see where it goes. I'm curious. Is he fighting Okada? Is it him and Okada?
Well, who he's
Jungle Boy and Okada?
He's not wrestling is Sonata after that Forbidden Door terrible match that they had. Well, not terrible match, but just nonsensical, I guess. Yeah. I think we have Bryan on. I think Bryan is ready to join us here. Do we have Bryan, Producer John? Okay, so
here.
I think I can hear him.
There he is.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you. What's going on?
Miracle. Not too much. What's happening? Congratulations on 100.
I think the last time you were on, it was also some sort of landmark first anniversary or something. So we bring you on only for the special shows.
It might have been episode 1.
I think it was episode 1. Yeah, I think
definitely on episode 1.
We'll see you on episode 200, Bryan.
That's right. Yeah.
So we're gonna do a little bit of Q&A for the super chat folks. But while we have Bryan and while we're waiting for questions, we're gonna utilize this time to pick his brain. And Bryan, here's a question that I had, which is, now I think the Seth thing we'll figure out maybe tomorrow more about how injured he is. But if Rock and Roman is the match at WrestleMania, is there a leader in the clubhouse for another Cody program? I mean, we've heard a bunch of different things. Could Cody be in a 3-way? Could there be 2 nights of Roman wrestling, which the guy's barely wrestling, once every couple months these days? I don't see that. But do you have any thoughts on what Cody could do if he doesn't have that WrestleMania main event?
I haven't thought about it a lot because I still think that that's going to be the Mania match or one of the Mania matches. And yeah, the obvious question is, okay, well, you've been building this up for a year, and there's a decent chance that we're going to do probably, actually, I would say there's pretty much a 99% chance, unless somebody gets hurt or some giant movie comes along or something like that, we're going to get Rock and Roman. So that does leave the question, what are you going to do with these guys? What do you do with Cody? What do you do with CM Punk? He's been talking about he wants to main event WrestleMania. And I think the 2 best options that I've heard are either, somehow Roman has to work twice. So you do Rock and Roman one night and Roman and Cody the other night. Or you do the 3-way, which, Rock would have to agree my final match is going to be a 3-way. I'm not sure he's willing to do that. So I don't know, man. I think you got to do the 2 nights of Mania somehow, one way or the other.
So basically, Roman, who is not even on Elimination Chamber. He's wrestling at Royal Rumble. Somehow you're going to get 2 matches out of him. This dude's not wrestling for the rest of 2024 if he has to wrestle 2 nights at WrestleMania. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It is
Andrew,
It is WrestleMania.
I hope they don't.
You
I
can
hope
do
they
2
don't
nights
do.
in a row if you need to.
I hope they don't do 2 nights. I really hope they don't do 2 nights for him.
What is that?
Yeah, I mean,
I know what I want.
Risk,
I
right?
have this.
There's risk.
I want to know what Andrew
I have my
wants.
fan fiction. I have my fan fiction fantasy booking that most likely will not happen. But I want night 2 to be Dwayne and Roman for the title, and night 1, Punk Austin. Everybody's happy.
You could do that.
We talked
You
about
can do that.
last year around this time, I think, because of that little thing that they did with the video game where Punk was kind of healing on Austin a little bit. But I don't know. Austin's like doing cold bath stuff right now. I don't know if he's training for a match.
Actually, that probably
anytime
is
soon.
training to get back in. I don't know. I shouldn't say that's training to get back into the ring, but like, if you want to get your body, feeling better, I mean, that's what everyone's doing. So I could see that being,
Copeland.
or it's just, someone clued him into it and he's beat up, and I'm sure he's still got some lingering issues. So cold baths probably help.
He cut quite a promo on the ice, by the way. He was so
I saw
mad
that
at the ice. Yes.
Yeah.
I
It
loved
sucks.
Well,
dude.
he didn't really plunge in there. He kind of just like dangled his feet in there for a little bit in that video. Unless there's
He tried
another
to
one where
ease
he
his
went
way
directly
in, which may
Yeah,
have
so
been
there's a second
No,
one.
that's
He
a
did
problem. You
one
don't do it.
where he tapped out. I think he said at 10 seconds, and then he did a second one where he got about to chest, and then he tried to kind of shrink down but he did the full 3 minutes. He was not a happy camper though. Okay, so Andrew, do we have a question for Bryan?
Yeah, we have a couple questions here, and we're gonna let Bryan start this. Here's one, Bryan, from Chris. How does AEW fix their ticket sales?
How do they fix their ticket sales?
I
mean,
think he's alluding that the ticket sales are not that high. They're not.
Sure.
In a lot of these buildings, they're going into markets and it's under 3,000 for Collision, or it's under 4,000 for Dynamite. What can they do to kind of bump that up to a number? I guess maybe another 1,000 people in those buildings.
Well, it sounds kind of stupid, but they need to do a better job of promoting their shows. And I mean, listen, it's not just they came to Seattle, okay? And it wasn't just when they came to Seattle, but like I hear this all the time. I'll give you an example. Every Dynamite, first off, they need to do a better job of local promotion. Like when they came to Seattle for that, I think it was the Inoki tribute show.
Wrestle Dream.
Yeah.
When they came here, it was like, in the old days, I'm an old man, a show would come to town and everybody I knew that knew anything about wrestling knew all about the show that was coming to town. Okay. Wrestle Dream is like, I heard from so many people that, there's a show this weekend. They had absolutely no idea. And why? Why did they not know that there was a big AEW show coming to Seattle? Well, the answer is they didn't do a great job of local promotion. And, local promotion, it's a lot of different things. Like, I will sometimes, when it's Monday and we're going over, okay, what's ever on all the shows this week? Dynamite's got 3 things announced. Okay. Well, then Tuesday they've got, 5 things announced. And then Wednesday afternoon, they're announcing a bunch of stuff on Twitter. And then, I'm not on Twitter all day. And so I start watching the show. And all of a sudden there's a match. It's like, there's a Hangman Page match on the show. How did I not know about this? Well, they announced it on Twitter in the afternoon. Okay. Well, the argument is a lot of people go on Twitter. They see it right before the show. They turn in. That's fine for TV. Okay. That's not fine for people that are going to go to the show and buy tickets. WWE, when I was young, they'd run a show at the Seattle Center Coliseum. And then when it was over, during intermission, they would say, we'll be back in August. And Hulk Hogan will be facing the earthquake. People will go nuts. They'd literally be sprinting to buy their tickets for the show, okay? But that was because they were told the main event months in advance for a house show, okay? Yeah. So WWE nowadays, if they're coming to your town, they're not going to tell you the lineup for the show because those lineups change, people get hurt, whatever. But they're going to tell you all the people that are going to be on the show. You know, you're going to be able to see, you know, Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes and blah, 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 blah. They don't have a card, but they have a lineup. And they sell tickets based on that lineup. And, you know, for AEW, it's like, have they done one show outside of Sting's retirement where they've really built up the fact that if you buy a ticket, this is the last time you're going to see Sting in your town? I think that they figure that fans know that because he's retiring here in a couple months. But, like, that's something you got to hammer into people's heads. You are going to see that this is the last time you will ever see Sting wrestle in your town. And you're going to see Swerve is going to be on the show. Samoa Joe is going to be on the show. Whoever else. You have to list the names, and you've got to do a strong local promotion. You got to get people on radio shows. You got to maybe buy ads during Raw. That's how you get people to go to the building. When AEW started, just having an AEW show was enough to get a lot of fans into the building. It's not like that anymore. You have to give them a reason to go, a name, a match, a special thing that's happening. You know, in the 90s in WWE, it's like whatever they advertise for Raw, and they still do this, they advertise a big main event. It's a non-televised main event. And I've talked about this for like months, maybe even a year. AEW has these matches that you've only seen like once or twice, these big matches. And, you know, if they are coming to town for Dynamite, let's say they're going to Norfolk, West Virginia for Dynamite, okay? You know, these are the guys that are going to be on the show. And if you buy your ticket, you're going to see MJF versus Samoa Joe. You're like, what? Well, it's not going to be on TV. It's the non-televised main event. It's a big match that you can only see if you buy a ticket. Well, now you're like, man, I want to see that match. Or the Young Bucks versus FTR. Or Swerve Strickland versus Hangman Page. Or whatever the match is. You'll see that if you buy a ticket to Dynamite. The rest of the world won't, but you will. And these are the things I think that they need to do to sell tickets. It's not just, hey, Dynamite's coming to town. You're going to see a Dynamite taping and 6 hours of Ring of Honor. It's not enough anymore.
Well, I always bring up Grand Slam as a good example, right? The first Grand Slam that they ran, that building was stacked. And of course it was going to be stacked. They had Danielson and Omega on that thing. First time in the New York market in that capacity. First time for that building ever for anything outside of tennis. You know, that wasn't associated with the USTA. They had such guerrilla marketing happening in New York. You had street art, you know, they stenciled AEW Grand Slam all over Midtown Manhattan. Okay, so you were looking at it. Every subway had an AEW poster somewhere. AEW posters on post. You know, they had a good street team advertising this. The last one, there was nothing. Nothing. You're in New York. You're in the New York market. A lot of eyes are going to see this. You know, one stupid taxi cab ad would garner, you know, X amount of views. I'm not saying that's the most effective way. Let's say 10,000.
But it's something.
Per something, you know, whatever the metric is. It's something to people that may not know or may need a reminder that this is happening. We saw with the show at the Coliseum or UBS the last time they ran it. MJF goes on local Fox 5 and does a local spot talking about being a Long Island kid and growing up, and now he's at the Coliseum, and all of a sudden, boom, 300 tickets sold. Those things go a real long time. Listen, I'm a marketer, so for me, I think it's bonkers that they don't do this. And a lot of people lean into, well, WWE doesn't. WWE doesn't need to because they've been established, you know, in the current sense since 1984. We know what it is.
And they're really
WWE's
hot right now.
And they're hot,
And
but
they're
also
really hot,
WWE
and
is
they
the Big
still
Apple
do
circus.
that kind of stuff. They
Yeah,
still do that kind of stuff.
It's the circus
Listen,
coming to town.
I know nothing about sports, as I think you guys are well aware, but I do know one thing. That sometimes there'll be a game on and it's blacked out. You can't watch it. You can't watch a game in your market. If you want to see it, you have to go to the game, right? A blackout, okay? Well, AEW is not going to do a deal. WWE is not going to deal. Well, Raw's in Seattle. It's blacked out for everybody in Seattle. That's not going to happen, okay? So if you can't black it out, what can you do? Well, you can do a match that you can only see if you go to the building. And, you know, one thing we know about AEW fans, you know, one difference between AEW and WWE fans, and it's still to this day, but less so now, I think, is that, you know, WWE fans, they want to see the stars. So, you can announce a big main event with, 4 stars or whatever, a tag match, and people will go to see those stars have that match. Match quality isn't such a big deal. AEW match quality is a bigger deal for the fans. You can announce great matches that you can only see if you go to the building. Okay, AEW's coming to town. Well, you're going to watch a Dynamite, and when it's over, we're going to give you House of Black versus Young Bucks and Hangman Page. Dude, that match is going to be awesome. You can only see it if you go to the building. So in lieu of a blackout, you've got to give them something that they can't see on television, because I can watch the show on television. Maybe it's like, if you're ever on the fence, should I go or should I not go? Well, can I see the show if I don't go? Yeah, I can see the show. Defy, it's a little bit different. I have to either get the Defy streaming service and watch it later, or I got to go. If there's guys I want to see at Defy, I got to go. And so you need that. You need something special to get people into the building above, hey, we're running a show.
So I have a follow-up question, and Andrew, I'll send my super chat in after.
Yes.
But so the follow-up is, obviously, why don't they do this? And do you think, and I know Tony Khan has mentioned this in the past, but just the inability to book, more than a week out for whatever reason, like is that the reason why they don't do this? Is it not knowing exactly what they're going to do? Because I had the same situation and when they came here for Collision in Oakland, and I was just on paper, I looked at that card because they had not announced a card until maybe a couple days before, and I sort of thought, okay, if they would have announced all of this stuff, it's actually a detriment to just the Collision show. The Collision show was actually better marketing than all of the matches that they put on that show. So, what is the main reason why they don't do it this way, do you think?
I can only imagine. Well, I mean, first off, WWE's been doing this for decades and decades and decades. And they run house shows. They'd been doing localized promos for house shows, dating back to probably the 70s or 80s. For sure the 80s, because I watched them in the 80s. And AEW is new. And, one of the things with AEW is when they first started, they didn't have a problem drawing a crowd just because they were coming to town. So now it's that transition phase. Okay, well, now you can no longer draw 6,000 people just because Dynamite is coming to town. So this is like a transition period where they got to figure out, okay, well, how do we get people in the building now? I think that also, if you watch AEW, Tony is clearly a big fan of New Japan. And New Japan does the same thing with their lineups. Like, they're not going to announce a card until the previous big show is over. They're not going to announce a title match. And then all of a sudden, well, we've got another, championship match coming up before. So spoiler, the other guy's not winning or whatever. They wait, and they did that actually for, Dave talked about Battle in the Valley. They had Battle in the Valley announced, and, up until a week before the show, it was doing all right, but it wasn't doing, great. And then a week before the show, they announced the card, and they sold a ton of tickets. So fans need a card. That's just what they need. If you want to do it the New Japan way, it's not like New Japan's drawn 7,000 people to their shows around here. I mean, it's the same deal.
They're going to try in April.
They're going to try, but they better have a card, because it's one thing if you run all of your shows in a small area, okay? Then yeah, I announced the card a week before. Well, I'll drive out to it or whatever. It might be a few hour drive, but we're talking, you are trying to run a country the size of the United States, whether you're AEW or New Japan, okay? I thought about going to Battle in the Valley, okay, at the last second. Like Monday, I thought about going on Saturday. So that was, by the way, when right around the time they announced the card. So we'll just pretend that I wasn't going to go, but when I saw the card, I decided to go. Okay, I went to get a ticket. I was going to pay 4 times as much because I was choosing to fly down the week of, as opposed to if I had gotten a ticket a month earlier and got a plane flight a month earlier. So when you're running a large, a country the size of the U.S., you're running these towns where you're hoping that people are going to come in from all over. Man, I need a card. I need to know I'm going to go a month in advance, not a week in advance, not 2 days in advance, not a day in advance. I need to make plans. So I think that for both New Japan and AEW, I know New Japan traditionally doesn't do it, and they're probably not going to, but they should have a card for Windy City in early March, and they're probably going to wait until April 1st to announce that card. And that's the way they do things. But AEW doesn't have to do that. You can either announce a card, or you at least have to know the top 10 names that are going to be on that Dynamite and announce them a month in advance.
Yeah. All right, we have another super chat. Andrew, I don't know who this one is from, but you can tell us after. The question is about doing a convention, which I believe F4W convention, for a WWE event, because we mostly do them. We've done them mostly for AEW. We've done some New Japan ones in the past, and not convention, but Q&As and such.
I think we've done Q&As and such for WrestleMania. And I think we're going to do it this year too. I mean, the main reason we always did the conventions with UFC and AEW is because UFC and AEW always did a late May Las Vegas show. UFC for years, one of their big shows. I mean, I think it was like a big show they did every year at the end of May, if I recall correctly.
Memorial Day, yeah, Memorial
Day weekend show. Yeah, they always had one. And so late May, Las Vegas, warm, easy travel city. You're not going to get caught in the snow going in, whenever. So that's why we always did that. And then AEW started running, late spring, early summer in Las Vegas.
Same weekend.
We started to do that. Yeah, we used to do, what else did we used to do? Well, we've done WrestleMania weekend. Yeah, we've done it.
There have been attempts to do other times, like I think some folks have tried to go out like for SummerSlam weekend or whatever, but that for whatever reason, and it's probably because that's the first time that we did it, was that Memorial Day weekend seems to work best.
Well, the other thing too is Las Vegas it's cheap, and it's cheap to fly in and out, cheap to get a room. I mean, you're going to go to WrestleMania. You know how much you're going to pay to fly in and out of WrestleMania. You're probably going to go to WrestleMania. You're going to have to get a hotel at WrestleMania. So yeah, we would draw from the people that are going there, but it's a lot easier to do Vegas for conventions. And UFC and AEW were the two big promotions that were regularly doing Vegas.
Yeah, we saw some Conor McGregor fights. We saw a Ronda Rousey fight.
Wow.
That was I
think we went to that one show. Remember that one show they built as all heavyweights? Which did like surprisingly, I shouldn't say surprisingly well. It shouldn't be surprised that people like heavyweight fights. But they did a show and the gimmick was all heavyweight fights. And it did really well.
Yeah, I remember there was a Tito Ortiz Machida fight. And I think I just made some bet on Tito. And then 30 seconds into this fight, I was like, I absolutely bet on the wrong guy, because Tito can only do one thing, and Machida is not going to let him do that one thing. All right, we have another question. But by the way, thanks to Daylon for that question. So the next question is, Andrew, you sent this to me. Does any interest from WWE or AEW regarding who is this person? Who is the women's wrestler that they're
Thekla?
Thekla? Is that who it is?
I haven't heard
interest?
anything. I haven't heard anything.
I don't even know who that is. That's probably really bad for me to not know.
I was surprised that there wasn't a lot of interest in Julia from AEW.
Julia, I
saw
that's
Julia a big question. Why wasn't there interest? That's a story now that's coming out, right? That AEW
I got no idea.
Really...
Because I mean, the very first time I ever saw Julia in Stardom, I was like, dude, why is everybody not pounding down the door to bring her in? And, AEW brought in Mariah May, who, she's very good looking. But, as far as Julia's got, aside from the language barrier, I mean, she's got everything. She had that match with Trish Adora this weekend. It was so good. And she's got so much charisma. She looks great. She's a great worker. And it's amazing that, the promotion that didn't want people that didn't speak English, they were the ones all over her. And AEW apparently didn't have any interest. And I have no idea why.
So Dave, when he talked about Julia live, I think he may have undersold her a tiny bit. And, he's not one for hyperbole, especially when he's reporting a show. But I thought like her charisma and star power live was like way over the top of someone who normally is in that position. Like, obviously, it wasn't going to be like Mercedes or Kyrie from last year because those are known folks. But for someone who's pretty unknown to a large audience, she stood out big time in the ring. So, yeah, I'm actually surprised because I think she would have fit in very well.
Well, you
in
also had,
AEW.
I mean, Trisha Dora's got a lot of potential, but she's green. And you had a match with a language barrier. And on top of that, it's like a lot of times when you see a match with somebody green versus somebody from another country who doesn't speak the language, it's like everything's got to be slowed down a little bit. That was not the case here. Like she was moving fast. They were doing quick spots. I mean, I was very impressed with that match.
All right, we've got almost 10 minutes, so let's get through the rest of these questions pretty quickly. Do you
I can
think
stay till about 10 after, but then I got to go pick up a child.
Okay. Do you know if Mercedes' deal will be wrestling only, or could it be a bigger deal, including WBD and movie roles? That is from Trust the Process, who's a big supporter of Wrestling Observer Radio as well.
I don't know if they can really promise something like that. Like, we will get you in movies. We will. I mean, you got to audition. You got to be right for the role. I mean, they may suggest something like that, but my guess is that it will be a deal with AEW for wrestling, and they'll push that we're part of WBD. But how do you promise it anyway? You don't even know where they're going. I mean, she could sign and show up, in the spring, and then their WBD deal is all done. I mean, you can't promise something like that. So I'm presuming it's just the wrestling.
Yeah, and you can't promise that she's going to be a voice in a Scooby-Doo movie because then it gets canceled before it even sees the light of day.
That's right.
What doing over there. Okay, so another question. Do you think Tony will give women more time when everyone is back from injuries and able to add Monet? That is from Chris. And I'm assuming he means like, maybe more matches per show for women than we see currently.
Do we have any evidence of that? When you look at they brought in Saraya, they brought in Mariah May, they brought in Deanna Prazo, they brought in, whoever else.
Tony Storm.
I don't think bringing her in is going to result in. I think you'll see her, fairly frequently, but I don't think that you're going to all of a sudden see this. Well, what's going to be interesting is if she comes in and they book her like they book all of the other women, which is, start and stop, not on every show, et cetera, et cetera. She has a very outspoken fan base.
Yes.
And Tony is on Twitter
a
lot.
Brian, you're kidding me.
I hope he's aware of what he's in for here. This is going to be a wild ride, would be my guess.
I said this 2 weeks ago after the death threats started coming in. I've done this for 10 years, not on your level, but like recently I'm now doing this on a higher level, right? Because I'm hearing things and I'm able to talk about it. I have never experienced this with the I'm gonna use a nice word and say passionate following. Have you? Like, who else can you, like, for you, like, is there anyone that's garnered this much aggression to just somebody posting, just not even an opinion, just like, oh, hey, by the way, she's going to AEW? Have you ever seen anything like that before?
I'm sure it exists, but this is a pretty passionate one here, I do have to say.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know why. I mean, she's very good. She's not the best women's wrestler in the world. She's not the best women's promo in the world. She's not the biggest draw of all of the women in the world. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but that's what it is.
Very passionate. I can touch on something, by the way, about more women's matches being presented on TV, or the women in AEW being presented. I mean, I've spoken to people there. That is something they want to do. Now, like Brian said, who knows until they start executing and they start committing to it. But that is something that they keep talking about, that they want to
Well, sure.
profile the women better. I mean, vocally, they're very vocal about that. It's not like we're not giving them a chance. I think what ends up happening is it's great on, when you talk about it, but actually executing and getting it done, that's the problem.
Well, I think that everybody can say everything that they want, but to me, it is very clear that Tony does not believe that the women are going to do as well on television as the men are. And that's it. That's all there is to it. If you look at the booking of women in Ring of Honor, totally different, okay?
Yeah.
The women are featured a lot. The women were the main event, a final battle. So Tony's booking Ring of Honor. So when I hear, well, they'd like to, it's like, well, you are actually doing that in Ring of Honor. So why aren't you doing that on Dynamite? And the answer is Ring of Honor is not a television show with quarter hours and ratings. And so it doesn't matter. Nothing matters on Ring of Honor. You've got your Ring of Honor Honor Club subscribers, and they're going to watch the show. And you could have all women's segments. You could have no women's segments. Like, you're not going to get ups and downs and losing viewers and everything like that, which they get on television. And he does not have the faith in the women. That's why on television, he books them differently than he books them in a Ring of Honor. And until he can be convinced otherwise, nothing is going to change. And, I've said for years, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay. I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not. I wrote 2 books. 100 Things WWE Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die was the most recent one. And when the publishing company was putting the cover together, I mean, they made the call. Front and center on that book needs to be Becky Lynch. She's the biggest star in wrestling. That wasn't a wrestling fan that came to that. That was the people that were putting the book together. Okay.
Interesting.
There was a period in 2018, late 2018, early 2019, where the biggest star in wrestling was Becky Lynch. She was the biggest, not the biggest women's star. She was the biggest star in wrestling. Becky Lynch, a woman. Okay. You can look at Becky's numbers, Rhea Ripley, Charlotte. I mean, Damage Control on SmackDown. When Roman Reigns is not there, the top storyline on SmackDown always involves Damage Control. And it's not like that show's doing bad numbers. So if you book women in a meaningful way, if you have women stars that the people see as stars, you book them as stars, you get your audience to see them as stars, and you put them in meaningful matches, they are going to do well. Tony right now does not believe that. So he books differently on television as compared to on Ring of Honor.
All right. So for folks who are sending in questions, hold off for now. I think we have enough that we can get through for the rest of this show. So let's go to the next one. Why do you think the non-in-ring stuff is much more popular in the U.S. than elsewhere? Is it partly due to WWE conditioning U.S. viewers for decades into thinking what wrestling is supposed to look like? From Ryan 94?
Well, the thing you have to think about, Ryan, is I'm sure you're probably talking about like New Japan and such, and you don't have like 20-minute talking segments and that sort of thing. The difference is in Japan, they still have like the magazines, and, pro wrestling is covered in the media. And so, they do storylines and guys do interviews, and they also do a lot of post-show press conferences, which you don't get here. And, guys, they do storylines and they do promos and they do back and forth, but they do it in a different way. Here, nobody's going to the newsstand and buying Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I can't even remember the last time I've seen a Pro Wrestling Illustrated anywhere. Most of the magazines have died.
That's where
there's no WWE magazine. It's like, if you're going to follow storylines, they're going to be during the body of a 2-hour show. And so that's what WWE and AEW and everybody else here in this country does. And now fans are conditioned to that in the sense that, you got to talk. You got to be in promo segments. You got to do interviews. You got to do angles. Otherwise, they just see you as a person. And, in Japan, they have multiple outlets in which to do their interviews, tell their stories, and it's different. But they do storylines, they do angles, they do fights, they do all of that, but not in the main body of a television show.
Okay, Brian, have you found a solution for your overrun recording issue?
I need to know this also because I have that problem. I have the YouTube Live problem, YouTube TV problem. Same thing.
Yep. I mean, here's the solution, and that is you got to go on YouTube when the show's over because they put the end of the show up. That's the solution. I mean, well, the solutions are this. You can watch it a day or two later, and YouTube TV will put the whole show up. You can watch it same day and go on YouTube because the overrun got cut off. Or what I was told works is that as long as you start before the show ends at 10. If you go to start watching it on YouTube TV at 9:58, it's going to say join live or start from beginning. You want to choose join live. If you start from the beginning, it's going to cut it off. If you choose join live, you can rewind to the beginning, and then you can let it play all the way through, and you'll start getting the next show as well. So those are the only options. But if you miss the show, if you arrive at 10:01 and the show's over, you're screwed. There's nothing that can be done. So no, there's no easy solution on YouTube TV. I don't care what your cable company does. I don't care what Spectrum does. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about your VCR. This is YouTube TV, and it doesn't work the way you think it works. That's it.
I've had a similar issue on Hulu, but it's not always an issue. It's sometimes, which makes me think if sometimes it can work, it should probably always work. So let's just make sure we're in communication.
I don't know why they don't just say, we're always going to have a 5-minute overrun. And if you don't, you don't. But if you do, it's there. Wouldn't that be the easiest solution?
What is the program that is after AEW?
I don't know. It's always changing. It's always like a movie.
La Femme Nikita.
No, I wish it were La Femme Nikita because I could just record that.
Okay, we have another, not really a question, but John, you can put the next one. I think is this a nickname for Brian? What's going on here? From whoever this person is.
Large and long shaft. Is this a nemesis of yours?
I have never heard of this person. But it's nice to meet you. Large and long shaft.
Yeah.
Paid $2.79 to put that on the screen.
Canadian.
That's why we put it up.
That's a man who has financial problems.
Okay, next question. Hey, Brian, any word on a possible TV deal, I'm assuming, for ROH? It has lost a lot of luster and AEW barely promotes it. A TV deal with good booking could probably help it. From Magicians
with good booking. Well, it's going to be the same guy booking it. So, I mean, if you like the Ring of Honor TV now, you'd like it on television. And if you don't, you won't like it on television.
Well, but
so I've heard nothing.
Based on what you said, on television, the women's show or the women's
it would be different.
ROH TV would be different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing is it wouldn't be 3 hours every show. You know, I would think that they would get. And, you know, the deal is with Ring of Honor being on Honor Club, I mean, there's a lot less stress. You know, what are you worried about? The quarter hours? No. You're just worried about how many people subscribe to Honor Club. He's got Dynamite, Rampage, Collision, Battle of the Belts every 3 months or whatever. I mean, that's more than enough. I mean, those you have to be concerned about. And, you know, obviously the biggest concern is Dynamite. You want those numbers to be high. Collision, there's obviously concern there. You want to get those numbers up. Rampage, I don't know what's going on with Rampage. But, you know, the next TV deal, I think the important things are to negotiate Dynamite and Collision. And do we need a Rampage? I don't think we need a Rampage. I don't think we need a Ring of Honor on television. I mean, WWE's got, you know, as far as main roster shows, they got Raw and SmackDown. And NXT, they got a great television deal. But, you know, NXT, they have people coming in and out from the main roster, but it's not like you need to watch the other two shows to understand NXT, and you don't have to watch NXT to understand the other two shows. They're concentrating on two shows. And, you know, one of the things with AEW is sometimes they're expecting you to watch all of those shows. Okay, well, why is this guy getting a title shot? I haven't even seen this person on TV. Oh, well, they've been on Rampage winning for like 3 months. What? I mean, there's too much TV. I'm not watching Rampage. I watch Dynamite and Collision. Well, I missed a bunch of stuff because they expect me to watch Rampage. Some people can only watch Dynamite. That's what they have time for in their schedule over the course of the week. Same thing with Collision. I mean, you don't want to add another show where, okay, we're going to shoot angles on Ring of Honor that are going to bleed into Rampage and then to Dynamite. Like, focus on the two shows. Focus on Collision. Focus on Dynamite. It's 4 hours of TV. That's the easiest thing as far as, like, what are people going to be able to watch? Well, maybe 2 shows a week. It's probably a lot easier when you had Dynamite and an hour of Rampage. Those days are gone. So now, get a good deal for Dynamite. Get a good deal for Collision. Concentrate on those two. I think that's the best bet.
All right, last 2 questions before we get out of here.
Brian has a minute.
Yeah. Who is taller, Bryan or Tony Storm? We'll forgive that other part of the question. But from the same guy, from the same guy as the last goofy question. Who?
That's my actual question?
Yeah, how tall?
Sure
how tall is
Tony
Storm?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I'm taller. You go to shows, these women are so short.
Tony Storm is 5'6".
Okay, if that's what it says on the internet, then she's 5'3".
That's what it says.
Okay, so I'm taller.
Okay, last question.
Well, it's like Rhea, right? Rhea's booked like she's 6'2", and she's 5'6".
She's not.
What is Bryan's favorite style of wrestling, and what is the definitive match from the past that best represents that style?
Oh man, what a question to end on. I don't have an answer because I don't have like a favorite style. I have watched wrestling forever, and I've seen 85 million matches. I think actually I did the math once, and it was like 45,000 or something crazy like that.
Really?
But
wow.
I just I watch so much wrestling. I just want to be entertained, and sometimes I watch so many different things I was entertained by this weekend. I watched that New Japan Battle in the Valley show, and you had every possible different style in that show. There was no bad matches on the show. And then I watched Raw, and they did like a 3 minutes, Ivar and Tozawa. Loved that match. You put Ivar in there with, some other Bronson Reed, 2 big dudes smashing each other. Love it. You have Ric Flair go out there, and he does a 30-minute match with whoever, Ricky Steamboat. They call the whole thing in the ring. Love it. I mean, I'm not even a big fan of like blood and guts, but Moxley and Shingo this weekend. I mean, that match was awesome. You could argue it was the best match on the show. It was that in the main event? But I don't have a favorite style. I have a favorite style I would like to work, but as far as watching, I do not have a favorite style. I love good, entertaining wrestling. I don't care what kind it is. I don't care who's in it, where it's from. I just want to see good, fun wrestling that excites me and the crowd. That actually is another part of it. The crowd has to be into it. I've seen some matches that are great, but the crowd's dead. Doesn't do for me. I got to see this crowd going nuts.
Well, all right. I think this was a really good, strong experiment. Thank you to everybody for all the super chats. And thanks to Bryan for coming on our 100th episode. And look, we did a 10-minute overrun, and YouTube did not cut it off. So everybody can watch this.
Yeah,
all
we got the whole show.
All right. Thank you to Bryan.
Well, thank you, guys. Happy 100th, and let's do it again.
All right. For Bryan, for Andrew.
I'll see you at 200.
We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.